Furguson with AARP Missouri, and I'd like to welcome you to our very first Yoga for All class. This is a part of AARP's Moving It Fitness series. The class is suitable for many levels of fitness. However, you should have received some cautions and guidelines when you got the reminder for this class. So make sure and adhere to the guidelines. And if you have any concerns, check with your doctor before participating. AARP Missouri also offers classes called Forever Fit and Zumba Light, and we have links to some of our past programming like Tai Chi that you can participate in from recordings. All of our programming is created with people 50 plus in mind, but it's good for anybody, any age, anywhere. And you can learn more about these opportunities at aarp.org/movingit. And you'll also find information there about our new sweepstakes for a Fitbit Versa 3 and other prizes. So if you have not signed up for the sweepstakes, please make sure and do it today. AARP realizes that our fitness series like Yoga for All can be great options for anybody who cannot attend a traditional fitness class like a caregiver, or for those of you who might be staying home to reduce risks during the pandemic. So AARP also has resources for caregivers, up-to-date COVID-19 information, and technology information that's available on our website at aarp/nearyou. Now, if this is your first time on Zoom, and I'm thinking maybe it is for some of you, you want to make sure that you are set up for success in Zoom. So the first thing you want to do is you want to pin our instructor, Tyler Furguson. So Tyler's waving at you. So look for Tyler in her little Hollywood square there. And you want to hover your cursor in the upper right-hand corner and click on those three dots. You'll get a little drop down and you can pin Tyler. When that drop down comes down, click on pin. And the other thing that will really help us out is if you make sure and put yourself on mute until the class ends and we open up for questions. All right, let's get started with our very first Yoga for All. Our instructor again is Tyler Furguson from Caliente Fitness. Tyler, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Diane. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited to see some familiar faces and some new faces. If you guys can bear with me, I have a few announcements that I want to get through this week, and then next week we'll get into the class a little bit quicker. Just a few quick things to cover, though, before we get started. If you're asking yourself, am I in the right place? I want to say, most likely you are. Yes. We had some people from mobility ask, well, if I can't get down on the floor, can I still do your yoga class? And the answer is yeah. You can do quite a bit of the class from the chair, and I'll be working on showing you some alternative moves from the chair in the next couple of weeks, but have a seat in the chair and do the best and follow along the best you can. Doing yoga doesn't mean you have to do every single move. You can pick out the pieces that work for you and leave out the pieces that don't work for you. Which is also to say that with the popularity of yoga and shapes and pictures of people in magazines, you might look at those people and say, man, I could never do that. I can't do yoga. That's so not true. Yoga is about connecting your mind into your body, becoming more aware of your movements and how you move, becoming aware of your movement patterns. So you don't have to look like me or look like anyone else on the screen. What I hope that you can do is maybe feel some of the things that all of us are feeling, whether it's length in the spine or a stretch in the side body. We're all going to look different getting there, but hopefully we're achieving the same goal of feeling that way. Please be mindful of the difference between pain and discomfort. Okay, pain is if something that takes your breath away, it causes your shoulders to go up, or you can no longer breathe. That is likely pain. It's important to get out of that, move out of that. This yoga practice is to calm our nervous system, not to trigger it. So be aware of that. And then learning what discomfort is, that's your journey. That's for you to figure out. And if you're just not sure, it's always wise to consult your doctor if you're just confused about if something's good for you or not. More specifically, today, if you've never done a virtual or a Zoom yoga class, I want you to be super careful with your neck. So one thing that can happen as we're working in Tabletop today, if you're working from this orientation and looking at the screen and you're like this, that's going to crank your neck. When we're in tabletop, I want your neck to be in a neutral position. So if you set yourself up so that you can glance to the screen, glance to the side at the screen rather than cranking your neck to look up. The same would be true in downward facing dog. My neck is in a neutral position here. It's easy just to look over at the screen for guidance and put my neck back into a neutral position rather than cranking up and looking here. That's not going to be good for your neck. Okay, so what to expect from class? We'll always start class with a few announcements. Then we'll open with a grounding and breathing exercise. Then we'll move into the yoga poses or asana. And then we'll always finish with final relaxation or your shavasana. And afterwards, I stick around for 15 minutes, so feel free to ask me any questions that you wish to ask. So let's begin class. Come on down to your back. And remember that orientation, so maybe getting your side view to the screen. What I'm going to encourage you to do is look at the screen when you need information, visual information, but train yourself to get used to the verbal cues. Place your feet on the floor and your knees up in the air. And just allow yourself to arrive. Your gaze, your eye gaze should be up at your ceiling. Now, if you need a little bit more space in the back, you can walk your feet wide to the edges of the mat and let your knees fall in on the ground. That might feel good in the back. If you don't need that, that's fine. And then the other thing you can do is you can start to slide your heels down and straighten out your legs. If that feels a little tight in the low back, just bend the knees again. That'll give you more length. From here, I'd like to encourage you to close your eyes. Start to prepare for class by allowing your mind to catch up with your body. There are different things we do as we move through our morning or our day to try to get ourselves on the yoga mat, and physically we can show up there. But sometimes mentally we're still hanging out in the place we were before, or we might be thinking about what we have to do after class. And I want to encourage you to use this time right now to bring the mind in sync with the body. And the best way to do that is by observing your breath. So start to feel the inhale, the air moving in through the nostrils and filling up the lungs, and your exhale. See if you can close your mouth and inhale just through your nose and exhale just through your nose. This time, feel when you inhale through the nose, feel the air move across the back of your throat and into your lungs. On your exhale, the air exits across the back of your throat and out of your nostrils. Continue your inhales and exhales at your pace, no matter what instructions I give. Don't interrupt your breath. Continue with your pattern. On your next inhale, feel the air move across the back of the throat, fill up the lungs, and feel the lungs expand in the torso like a balloon blowing up and expanding. On your next exhalation, feel the contraction of the balloon and the air moving across the back of the throat and out of the nose. Continue several more times, visualizing the air moving in the body, the lungs expanding, the contraction, and the exit of your breath. As you notice the breath and the senses begin to lighten up, feel the back of your head touching your mat, the space between your shoulders, your shoulder blades touching the mat, your hips, your elbows, your fingertips or the back of your hands, your heels or the bottom of your feet. Notice the texture of the mat or the surface that you're working on. Notice the temperature of the room, if there's a fan, a ceiling fan blowing a breeze on you. Notice the subtle sounds of the space that you're in, voices in other rooms, cars outside, furnace kicking on and off. Continue noticing your inhale and exhale. One more round. after your last exhale, open up your eyes slowly and give your eyes a couple of blinks. Slide both of your heels back to your seat, bending both knees, placing the bottoms of both feet on the ground, and then bring your right knee in toward your chest. You can take your hands and bind them on your shin, and the knee can be in toward the chest or over towards the right armpit. Feel maybe some length in the low back here. And you have an option. You can keep your left foot on the ground, or if the low back likes it okay, you can slide the left foot long. So feel the difference between the contraction of the flexion of the right hip and the length of the left hip. Draw the left toes towards the left shin bone and push through the left heel. Notice the crease or the space in the left hip and see if you can make more space in that crease. Place your hands on the top of your right knee and start to take some circles with your right knee, pushing the right knee a little bit away from your trunk. You can look at me and see this. Bring it across your midline and take it away out to the side of the body, just making some gentle circles with your right hip as you're pressing your left leg long. Pause and take your circles the other direction. And as you're making these circles in your hips, you might notice that your weight is shifting on your hip bones on the back side of your body, or getting a little massage in the low back. Finish here, bring your knee into your chest, and then extend through your right leg, and your hands can bind behind your hamstring. Let's point and flex the toes here. So dorsal flexing the ankle means bringing the toes to the shin. So notice, pause there and notice the stretch you get behind the knee or in the hamstrings, and then point. Start to move into some circles, feeling your ankle mobility, and see if you can spread your toes. If you've been with me in mobility, take your circles the other direction. You know that having control over your toes and of your muscles, the intrinsic muscles of your foot, is a nice thing to have. And then finish your circles. Start to hug your leg into yourself one more time. Bend your right knee, place your right foot down on the ground, slide your left heel in, and we'll start this on the other side. Left knee comes into the chest. So pause here. Moving in and out of poses is as important as the pose itself. So notice how the left hip feels in flexion on this side. And then bring your awareness to your low back. Start to slide your right heel away and notice if the low back is happy with that extension of the right leg. If the low back is happy, keep the right leg extended. If the low back isn't happy, rebend the right knee and put the right foot on the ground. Wherever you are, with the foot, start to find some circles in the left hip. Drawing the knee towards the left armpit more and letting it move away, then across the midline. Seeing if you can feel the femur head move, the femur head of the left leg move in the hip socket. Pause and take your circles in the other direction. Keep breathing here, just like you did in the beginning of a class. Pause here. Continue to breathe. Now flex the right ankle. So draw the toes back to the shin and start to push through the right heel, opening up the front line of the front hip or the right hip. And then notice if you can create a little bit more length, a little bit more space in the right hip. If you're choosing to keep your knee bent, that's fine. You wouldn't do this part. Now extend the left leg long, take your hands back behind your left hamstring and start to point and flex the left ankle. Again, if that's too much on the lower back, you can feel free to bend the right knee and put the right foot back down on the ground. Otherwise, pointing and flexing left ankle and then starting to find some circles. So as you do your circles, notice, are there places where you speed up in your circles? Are there places where you feel some gravelly crunches? Do the circles help eliminate the gravel and the crunches? And can you maintain the same speed in your circles? Pause and finish your circles. Draw your full left leg extended towards your trunk just a little bit more And then bend the left knee back into your chest. Keep the left knee bent into the chest. And then pull the right knee into the chest for tiny ball. So you're going to start to squeeze the knees in and give yourself a hug. Make sure you're looking at the ceiling now, no longer looking at the screen. Tuck your chin and lift your head off the ground a little bit. And if that feels okay, start to peel up your shoulders and squeeze yourself into the tiniest ball. That's a big hug from me to you. Thank you for coming today. Place your head back down. Let go of your feet. Place your feet back down and extend the legs long. Reach the arms overhead but on the ground. So the backs of your hands are on the ground. Your fingertips are pointed to the back of the room. And then stretch more through the right leg and more through the right arm. Inhale and breathe into the length of the right side. Exhale, release. Now stretch more into the left leg and more into the left arm. Breathe into that. And exhale, release there. Take both feet and walk them over to the right side of the mat. So leave your hips where they are. Just walk the feet off the right side of the mat. So you start to take the shape of a banana in the bottom of your bottom half of your body. Do the same thing with your head. Walk it off the same side, the right side. Maybe move your shoulders over a little bit and reach your arms overhead and see if you can take the shape of a banana. So if both your feet and your hands are on the right side of your mat, notice the length of the left side of the body. Breathe into that left rib cage, that left armpit. Feel the expansion. Feel yourself fill up. And then start to walk the feet back into neutral. So back to the middle of the mat. The head comes back to the middle of the mat. And then walk your feet over to the other side. So now the feet go over to the left side. The head lifts and moves over to the left side. And the shoulders can lift and move a little bit. Reaching the arms overhead to the left side now and off the mat. Feel your stretch and sensation in the right side. Now I'm going to note, if you have a shoulder injury and it's difficult to reach your hands above your head, no need to bring your arms any higher than your shoulders or whatever feels comfortable for you here. You can still get a stretch on your side body. Otherwise, big breath into the right rib now. Feel it expand. And then exhale, walk the head and feet back into a neutral position on the mat. Pull the right knee into the chest, pull the left knee into the chest, and roll over onto whatever side of your body allows you to see the screen that you're working on right now. This is your Shavasana B shape. Make a little pillow for your head and pause here for a moment. We'll visit this shape in class a lot. We'll do a pose called open books. So notice that your hips are stacked right now, the knees are stacked right now, and your shoulders are stacked right now. But we're going to exit Shavasana B and move to a seated position. So take your top hand, press it on the ground, and press yourself up to a seated position. Now, seated work can sometimes feel a little tight in your hips. And if that's your situation today, I want to use this opportunity to show you some props. If you brought some folded blankets to class, you can just set those folded blankets down, and that'll give you the opportunity to elevate your hips, which feels great in my body. So I'm just going to sit at the front of these blankets, crisscross applesauce my legs, and that's just going to create a little bit more room, and I don't feel so tight in here by elevating my hips. These cushions or bolsters or other ways to elevate your hips. And if it's still not working for you, you can have a seat for this part if sitting on the ground doesn't work for you. And if crisscross applesauce doesn't work and you just really need to straighten out your legs, feel free to do that too. Remember, this is your practice. We don't want to trigger your fight or flight. We want to stay in our calm, rest and digest nervous system. From here, place your hands on your thighs and just start to take some gentle trunk circles. So notice, as you're taking these circles, your shoulders are going to go in front of your hips, to the side of one hip, behind your hips, and to the side of the other. Now, as you take these circles, I want you to bring your awareness to your sit bones, or the fleshy part touching the cushion or the chair right now. Pause with and take this the other direction. Notice how the weight shifts in the bottom of your body or in your tail, and then notice how you're moving from your sits bones to your sacrum and then your sits bones peel up. Notice all of that. So let's break that down. Bring your shoulders right over your hips. And then the bottom of your pelvis, that's what we call the sits bones, or your ischial tuberosity. So see if you can find those into the mat. And if you're having trouble, you can peel the flesh away. Just pull the flesh up a little bit and get a little bit more bone down there. Now, imagine those bones anchoring you down in the chair so that your spine can get long and the rest of you can grow tall. So one of the things we work for in yoga is taking energy two directions. So imagine that right now. Now, if I take my shoulders back behind my hips, notice the sits bones come up a little bit, and I start to move onto my tail or my sacrum, the bottom of my spine. So move your shoulders back so you're right square on your sits bones, feel that. And then bring your shoulders forward. Notice the sits bones peel up in the back, and you start to move toward your pubic bone a little bit. And bring your shoulders back over your sits bones. So these landmarks are important. This is why. Press down through your sits bones and now start to draw them together a little bit. Now you can't move your bones, but you might have turned on some muscles as you tried to bring them together, and that's stabilizing your deep core. Keep those muscles slightly turned on, and then inhale, bring your arms up to the sides. Exhale, bring your arms down. Now I went to the sides for anybody with shoulder injuries. If you don't have a shoulder injury, go ahead and inhale and bring your arms up overhead. Reaching overhead, exhale, bringing your arms down. Good. Now, I want you to move with your breath, not with me. So on your inhale, move your arms up. So at the top of your inhale, your arms reach the top of the air. And at the bottom of your exhale, your arms reach the ground. But make this your practice. You might go faster than me. You might go slower than me. It's not your job to keep up with me. It's your job to keep up with you. And know that anytime we move in class, move at the pace that suits you, move with your breath, not with my breath. Let's hold our arms up at the top of this next inhale. All of us will come together at the top of the next inhale. If you have a shoulder injury, you stay right here. Otherwise, bind your elbows here, or if it feels okay, bind above your head. Start to pull your rib cage up out of the pelvic floor. So you're going to take these gentle tick-tocks here, but notice the sits bones. Can you stay grounded? Can you stay seated in the sits bones and not peel the right or the left one up as you take these tick-tocks? After you finished your last one, come back to center, bring your arms down to the sides. Now, depending on how high your hips are, if you have books or boxes or blocks, you might use them right now. It's not completely necessary. But depending on how high your hips are, take your hand and plant it down on the ground. If you got a book nearby, you can plant it on a book. Keep your sits bones even, and then inhale your opposite arm up, and then exhale, come over into a deep side bend. So the arm that's down, that elbow can bend. Notice if the arm that's up, if that sit bone traveled with you. Keep it down, and also keep the knee down on that side as well. Lengthen through the crown of the head, lengthen through the tops of the fingers, and continue to breathe. So we're sitting in this lateral side bend. Sometimes when we move into a yoga shape, we hold our breath to hold the shape. Try to breathe into this shape. Breathe right into that rib cage and open it up. And then bring your hand back down, come back to center, and we'll take it on the other side. So plant your opposite hand down in a way that's comfortable. It's okay to bend your elbow, but if you know me and you've been in mobility, pack your shoulder. Opposite arm reaches up, keep your sit bone down on the right side, and then, or both sides, and reach your arm up and over. So if this is a newer pose for you, just trying to adjust to this shape. And if you're used to this pose, blade your fingers together and start to create energy from the tips of your fingers all the way down to the sit bone. Try to think of that whole unit as one piece, that connection, right fingertips to right sit bone or whatever arm is elongated. Continue to breathe. And then bring yourself back to center. Now, yoga is a practice of observation, so noticing your patterns. Notice what leg crisscrossed in front. Go ahead and switch. Crisscross your other legs in front. Notice how that feels in your body right away. We often cross the same legs in front, just like we often bind the same hands. So now I'm going to invite you to take your right arm, bring it behind your back. You can place it on a block if you need to. And then take your left arm and place it on the outside of your right thigh. So we're going to move into a seated twist. So I want to encourage you right now to think of your rib cage like a globe and think of your spine like the axis of the globe. Now inhale, lengthen tall, find the grounding of the sits bones. And then exhale, rotate your chest just toward that knee a little bit, the knee that your left hand is on. Inhale and rotate again. Exhale, pause and stay long in the spine. Keep your eye gaze and your nose and your chin in alignment with your chest. Inhale, twist a little bit deeper with the ribs. Exhale, pause and stay long. So using the breath to get deeper into a twist, if my right hand is back, I'm twisting to the right side of the room. Using the breath, inhale, twist a little bit deeper if you have room to do that. Exhale, release, lengthen through the spine. Both sits bones are down. Now take your eye gaze and look over your back shoulder. So now you're bringing your neck or your cervical spine into the twist that your thoracic spine is in. Notice a tendency to pull the knees up here. See if you can relax in the knees, relax in the jaw and the forehead. Now to exit, take your eye gaze, bring it back in line with your chest, and then take your trunk and move back to the center. Entering and exiting the poses are just as important as the pose itself. So unless you're feeling pain, try to exit the pose just as mindfully and slowly as you enter the pose. This time, left hand goes down on the ground. Right hand goes on the outside of the knee. Lengthen through the spine. Inhale, exhale, rotate and twist. Now you'll notice the first time I had you twist on the exhale. This time I'm going to have you inhale and twist. Exhale, stay long. Inhale, twist a little deeper. Exhale, stay long. I'm using my hand on my knee to help me get a little deeper in the twist because it feels okay in my body to do so. Continue to breathe. Continue to explore. Lengthen the spine. Pull both shoulders away from the ears. One more breath, one more rotation. A little bit deeper into this twist. Here you can take your eye gaze and start to rotate, looking over your back shoulder, taking your cervical spine or your neck deeper into the twist. Continue to breathe here. To exit on your exhale, take your eye gaze, bring it back into alignment with your chest. Then bring your chest to the front of the room. Sweet. Let's move on to our hands and knees and do some poses in tabletop. So coming off of our bolster or our blanket, coming down on the floor into tabletop position. For some of us, this can be a little bit uncomfortable on the knees. So if you have a blanket or a pillow or a towel in your practice, today you might want to start by placing that right under your knees to give them a little bit of padding. Now I'm going to switch my orientation so you can see what's going on with me today, but I'm going to start here and show you that when you come to tabletop position, you want the knees to be under the hips and you want the wrists to be somewhat under the shoulders. They can be slightly in front of the shoulders, but you really don't want to be too far behind the shoulders. That's a lot of flexion on the wrists. Similarly, you want the knees to be under the hips, not together like this. So oftentimes when people go to tabletop, their knees are together. So widen them to create a stronger base of support. Spread your fingers wide. So spread out the webbing of the hands, just like we spread our toes and spread the skin on the bottom of the feet. Now notice you might have a lot of weight dumping into your wrist here. So press your fingertips down like you're gripping a basketball, almost like your knuckles come up, like your hands are rounding around the basketball. And we'll move into cow pose. So allow your rib cage to drop. So pull your rib cage down to the ground, lift your eye gaze and lift your tail. And your tail should be in sassy. We call this sassy for mobility class, sassy tail. So your shoulders are in pack, tail is lifted, eye gaze lifted. And then let's move into cat pose. So here, pull your belly button away from the floor. Press your back ribs up towards the ceiling. Start to round your chin into your chest. Your eye gaze will go to your knees and your tail tucks like cashew. Take a moment and a couple rounds of breath here in your cat pose and just notice how it feels here. And then when we transition again into cow pose, slightly bend the elbow, start to pull the hands back, draw them back to the knees as you pull your rib cage down to the floor, and then your heart through your arms. Lift the gaze, lift the tail, elbows are slightly bent, shoulders packed. Inhale here. Exhale, push the ground away. So the hands are pushing towards the front of the mat. The spine is rounding out towards the ceiling. Belly button pulls in, knitting front ribs. Eye gaze at the knees, tuck the tail. Now continue to move with one breath. Inhale, cow pose. Elbows bent. Heart shines forward. Exhale, arms straighten out more. Moving into cat pose. The whole time you're doing this, continue moving with your breath. Think about what's happening in your spine. We're trying to create length in the spine, and we're trying to find articulation in each vertebra of the spine. So if you can visualize those two things happening in your spine, see how that informs the work that you're doing. After your last cat pose, try to come to neutral in your spine or flat back. Once you've arrived here, put your big toes together, widen up your knees, and send your hips back to your heels. We'll move into child's pose. So your chest is going to come down to the ground. If your chest or your head doesn't make it down to the ground here, you can invite in another blanket or another towel, because I'd really like for you to be able to rest your forehead on something to relieve all the tension out of your neck. So from child's pose, just feel the rib cage expand into the inner thighs on your inhales. Maybe feel the ribs leave the inner thigh on your exhale. Take your fingertips and walk them forward in child's pose, like two big spiders climbing to the front of your mat. Notice how the back muscles come on. Press the fingertips into the ground and get this big stretch. Now lift the hips up just a little bit so you can walk your fingers forward about 2 inches, plant the fingers, and send your hips back and let your fingertips slide down. Notice if you get stretch in the armpit or in the upper arms or in the back body. Walk the fingertips forward again, lift the hips a tiny bit, and then sit the hips down and let it pull and tug on the arms. Press the fingertips into the ground, press the tops of your feet into the ground, draw your belly button in and pull yourself back up into your tabletop position, and then organize your tabletop position, finding your flat back. We're going to take a move called thread the needle here. Place your right hand behind your head, place it on your, or let it rest on the back of your head. Now open up your chest to the right side of the room. Notice where your limitation is in your fascia. Pause there, and then thread, take your right hand off, thread it behind your left wrist, through to the other side. Hinge your hips and put your head and your temple down on the ground or on the mat. Make sure you're breathing here. Now your left hand is flat on the mat. Start to push away. So push the hand towards the left wall and notice how you get more stretch on your right shoulder blade, that fascia back there. Keep breathing. Head is resting on the ground. Now press into your left hand, unthread your right arm, place it on the back of your head, rotate your rib cage, open up to the side of the room again, and then thread it through one more time. And by one more, it'll be a couple more. Thread through, get a little bit deeper, let the hips hinge, let the head rest on the ground and breathe. Start to push away with the right hand. Maybe take your eye gaze and rotate your neck and look up at the ceiling a little bit more. And then push up, unthread your right arm. This time you don't have to put it in the back of your head. This time open up your arm if your shoulder feels healthy. Open up your rib cage, see if you got more mobility, and then thread it through one final time. See if you can reach a little bit deeper over to the left, placing the shoulder, the right shoulder, the back of the right shoulder, the right ear down. Take one breath deep into the hip, where the hip crease is, and then press up and unthread one final time. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my mic on that one. Open up the right arm, take some circles in your wrists, give your wrists some love, and then plant your hand down. So that's thread the needle. We'll do this on the other side, but I want you to know why we're doing this. We're trying to get more mobility in the thoracic spine. So when the arm lifts up, it's not important that the arm or the shoulder moves. It's important that the trunk, right? It's important that the rib cage moves. So by putting the hand behind the head, we're keeping the arm out of it at first to train the trunk to rotate. Weight goes into the right hand, left hand goes behind the head. Press into the tops of the feet as you find your end range of rotation here. Inhale here, and then exhale, thread left arm behind the wrist, through, hinge at the hips, bring your shoulder down, and bring your temple down to the mat. Press into your right hand, push the mat away, and notice the gentle stretch that you get on the back left shoulder blade, or even somewhere in the left armpit. Put your weight into your right hand, unthread, nice and slow and mindful. Hand goes in the back of the head. Open up the chest. That's where we want the rotation. It's chest rotation, not shoulder. And then let go. Thread through a second time. Reach a little bit deeper. Take a little bit more mindful breath here. This time your eye gaze, if your temple is down, you can rotate and look up at the ceiling or up into your armpit. Get a little bit more rotation in the neck. And then let's take the eye gaze down, press weight into the right hand, unthread. This time open up. We know we're going through with the rib cage, so go ahead and let the arm open up, but you're trying to get mobility in the rib cage. And then one final time, thread it through. Biggest thread of the night, or of the day, of the night. And then take a big breath into where you feel the hip crease, right there. Sometimes we don't want to breathe into a twist, so tell your body it's okay to breathe into that twist. And then unthread out and come back into planting your hands down into the ground. Let's come into a loaded child's pose here. So your hips are going to come back, but the toes are curled under. And then you're going to bring your right knee to your right elbow and pause. Bring your belly button in, squeeze your glute, and then place your knee right back down. Let's do that 2 more times. Bring the knee in towards the elbow, place the knee back down, loaded child's pose. You don't have to put your head down. One final time, knee toward the elbow, draw the belly button in like a little crunch. Knee goes back down. Now listen, it's going to change. This time you're going to bring the right knee to the elbow and step outside the right hand. If your foot doesn't land outside the right hand, that's okay. You can pick it up and get it there. That's fine. Once you've arrived, come up to your proposal pose or your 90-90 position. Now this is important. These are all our functional shapes for our practice. Take your back leg, press the top of the shin and the top of the foot into the ground. So notice what comes on. You might feel the quad turn on when you do that. Now squeeze the back glute. When you squeeze the back glute, you might notice that you start to open up in the hip. So feel that leg activation. That's going to help you stabilize the hips, also increase your stretch here. Now push into the front heel just a little bit, and then bring the arms up overhead. Take a bind in the hands, just like we did before, and bringing your rib cage up out of your pelvic floor, but try to find that dual energy. Keep pressing down through the top of the left shin, top of the left foot, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze the right glute, push the front right heel into the ground. Did I say squeeze, squeeze, squeeze the right glute? I mean left. The foot that's back, squeeze the left glute, and push the right front heel into the ground. Inhale, lengthen here. Exhale, bring your hands back down to the mat. Step your right foot back, and we'll take that on the other side. Hips go back a little bit, left knee to left elbow, pause. Belly button comes in, knee goes down, hips go back. Knee to the elbow, pause. One more time, knee goes down, loaded child's pose. Knee goes to the elbow, pause. Press your fingertips into the ground here, let the knuckles light up. This time you're going to step through. Hips go back a little bit and drive the knee to the elbow, step through to low lunge. Take your time to come up into your 90-90 or your proposal pose here. Immediately start working the back leg. Press the back foot, back shin into the ground. Make sure that your pelvis is neutral here. So if you're super sassy in your pelvis, see if you can bring your shoulders over your hips, and take your pelvis more into a neutral shape. Now press into your shin, squeeze the back glute, right glute, push into the front heel, bring your arms up overhead, reaching, finding that duality. So the grounding length of the right shin and the right glute, the stretch of the right quad, and then the lengthening energy of the spine. Bring your hands back down inside the left foot and bring the left foot back down into tabletop position. Now, for some, bringing your head below your heart isn't advisable if you have glaucoma or if you have hypertension or any blood pressure issues. If that is the case, please avoid this pose. For everyone else, let's curl our toes, lift our hips, and find a downward facing dog. In downward facing dog, you want to have a soft bend or a deep bend of the knees, and your heels can lift. So if you can just take a gaze over to the screen, it's perfectly considered downward dog with bent knees and lifted heels. What I'd like for you to think about more is the line from your fingertips up your arm to your hips. Spread your fingers wide, press your belly button and chest more towards your thighs. Let your head hang heavy and your eye gaze looks back at your toes. Walk your hands backwards toward your toes. As you walk your hands backward, you're going to feel the heels come down on the ground, come to forward fold. So this is still unadvisable if you have glaucoma or hypertension. Forward fold, let the head hang heavy. You can have bent knees and forward fold. Let the chest drift on the, lay on the thighs. Maybe grab opposite elbows and notice how that takes you deeper into the fold, a deeper stretch into the hamstrings. Now, if you want to feel more stretch in the hamstrings, release the bind on the elbows, press the hands in the mat, lift the hips a little bit higher to straighten out the legs, and then drop the hips. Walk your hands back out on the mat and come out into your tabletop position. Back down into your tabletop. So we flirted with our downward dog today. Next week, we'll get into standing. We just had a lot of basics to cover for today. From here, come down to a seat and then swing your legs around and we'll make our way onto our back. Nice and slowly, hold onto your shins and you're gonna cashew your tail and lay yourself down on the ground. Bring your feet into your hips so your knees are back up in the air, just exactly where we began. Arms go down to the sides. Pretend like you have a playground ball between your thighs, so as if you're squeezing your inner thighs together, they don't touch, but you pretend like they are. Lift your hips up into the air for bridge pose. So the hips come up in the air, pause, bring your hips back down. I want to make this point. If you're looking at me right now, I want you to look at the ceiling and then go into bridge pose. Because of the potential weight in the neck, it's not good to move your head side to side while you're in bridge. So look up at the ceiling, arms down to the sides, push into the heels and lift the hips. Keeping the hips lifted, start to squeeze the glutes a little bit and notice when you squeeze your glute muscles, the front of the hips, so your hip flexors open up. Allow yourself to continue to peel up and feel the broadening across your chest. If you want to feel that broadening a little deeper, roll slightly under your right shoulder and scoot your left shoulder blade under or toward the midline. Then slightly roll over to your left shoulder and scoot your right shoulder blade under. If that doesn't make sense, I'll explain it after class. Try not to look at the screen. And then keep scooching your shoulder blades toward one another or toward the midline. Maybe your hands can even grab and bind here, feeling your chest open a little bit more. Keep breathing in the spine, keep working the glutes and allowing the squeeze of the glutes to open the front of the hips. Even the quad muscles feel stretched here. Release the bind. Walk the shoulder blades away from each other and allow your back to go back down into the floor. Widen your feet the tiniest bit. Let both knees fall over to the right side as your arms come out into a T. Taking a little twist here. And let the breath become less conscious are less forced as we wind down our practice a little bit. We'll switch the legs the other side. So draw the belly button in, bring the legs back up to center carefully, and let the knees fall over to the other side. As the knees fall over, the feet can walk on the mat to accommodate the twist. If you're looking, if your knees are over to the left, you can look to the right, extending this twist into the neck. I forgot to cue that on the other side. And then bring the knees back up to center. Option to keep the feet planted on the ground or let the feet walk long. Just take a moment of stillness here. Close your eyes. Let the feet fall to the sides. Notice if you have any tension in your forehead, relax your eyes. Let your eyes fall back. Let the mouth slightly open and the tongue move away from the roof of the mouth. Teeth are separated. Soften the space around your heart. Soften the space in your belly. Soften the space in your legs, toes, fingers, let it go. Stay here in silence for just a moment and then I'll bring you out. Allow your exit from Shavasana now to be slow and mindful. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, start to move your wrists and your ankles. And take a deeper, more conscious inhale and exhale here. Bend your elbows and your knees. Bring your knees into your chest and roll over onto your side into that Shavasana B position and put your hand on your head. Your head on your hand. Take a breath here. Just allow everything to settle and catch up with you. And then take your top hand, press yourself up, and come to a seat. If it feels comfortable to go back to crisscross applesauce and the legs, you can do so. You can reestablish the sits bones and the length once again in the spine. It's a pleasure and an honor to get to share this practice with you. Thank you for coming with me. Namaste.